You're listening to the Membership Geeks podcast, bringing you proven practical tips and advice from the leading experts on growing a successful membership business.
Well, hello there. Welcome back to the Membership Geeks podcast. I'm Mike Morrison, your host for the show and the founder of Membership Geeks and Membership Academy. And today I've got an episode I think a lot of people are going to resonate with, especially if you're already running a membership, you're an expert, an influencer, you teach something, you lead a community, you build something around your expertise, but perhaps you've never really thought about yourself as a personal brand. Or maybe you've seen and you've heard a lot of people talking about the importance of personal brand, but you've never really figured out how that all works in real terms. Because in this space, in the online business world, personal branding often gets talked about in a really surface level way. Start a podcast, post more on social media, write some blogs, get your face out there. It's kind of just like a marketing to-do list, but often people just don't talk about the human side of it. What it actually means to put yourself out there, to attach your name, your face, your opinions, your perspective, your story, and your voice to the product you've created with your membership. And this is something that's becoming increasingly important as AI becomes more and more part of our day-to-day life. But how do we deal with confidence if you're not a confident person, if you don't feel assured enough to put your face out there, to state your opinions clearly? The issues that trying to go all in on personal brand brings up around things like that, around comparison to others, around imposter syndrome, around that fear of being judged or feeling like you're not big enough yet, or that you aren't in a position where you have earned the right to express an opinion. All of this stuff matters, and all of this stuff can get in the way of building an effective personal brand. Because when your business is built around you, when you're the expert, when you're the person people buy into as much as they buy into your membership, personal branding becomes essential. Members don't just consume your content, they don't just log into a platform, they buy into you, your perspective, your way of thinking, your leadership, and your voice. And so the way that you show up publicly has a much bigger impact than many people running memberships actually realize. And so that's why I wanted to bring today's guest onto the show. Bob Gentle is a personal brand strategist, digital marketing consultant, and executive personal branding coach. He's the founder of Amplify Me and the host of the Building Your Leader Brand podcast, which I've had the distinct pleasure of appearing on a number of times. Now, Bob's been in this space for almost 20 years, and he works with founders, CEOs, leaders, and experts to help them build authority, visibility, and develop personal brands that actually fuel their business growth. And as I said, I've been on Bob's show a few times over the years. He is without doubt one of my favorite people to talk business and marketing with because he's thoughtful, he's grounded, he looks at things through perspectives that you don't often find within the bog standard branding advice you see out there in the online space. He's not obsessed with the tactics, he goes deeper, looking at how people work, how that fear shows up, how confidence develops, how identity and strategy combine, and all of that real human side of personal branding really came through in our conversation. So we talk about personal branding in a practical sense, platforms, getting visible, building authority, all of that. But more importantly, we dive deep into the human side of things too. The stuff that most membership owners are quietly struggling with, but they don't always feel comfortable to say out loud. So whether you're someone who's been actively and intentionally working on building a personal brand, or if you've been avoiding it, putting it off till later, a little bit nervous, a little bit hesitant, I know you're going to get a lot out of today's interview. So without any further ado, let's dive into my conversation with Bob Gentle. All right, so Bob Gentle, welcome to the Membership Geeks podcast.
I am more excited than you can possibly imagine. I've been a listener for a long time, and I never actually imagined when we met that this would ever happen. So I'm like a child today. It's like Christmas again.
Well, I mean, I hope I can live up to that in terms of where we take the conversation. But anytime we talk business or branding or pretty much any topic of conversation, it's always such a rich discussion. So I've been fortunate enough to be invited onto your show a few times. I've had some great discussions there. And I'm just really excited to talk branding with you because I think right now the landscape in so many ways feels the same as it ever has and feels even more like the personal side and the way that we show up as humans is as critical as it's ever been, but at the same time is perhaps as challenging as it's ever been to build and to amplify that personal brand online in the face of so much noise we're seeing. So I suppose the best place to start is with the absolute basics. What are we talking about when we say personal branding?
So I think a lot of people will tell me, oh, I have a personal brand. And I think that's a poor distinction for me. The way I would summarize a personal brand is it's how we exist in the mind of another person. Full stop. That's it. So on that basis, everybody has a personal brand.
Yeah.
My perspective is how intentionally are we cultivating that? So I like to make a distinction between a personal brand and a leadership brand. And a leadership brand, we're becoming really intentional about how we are showing up for other people. And alongside that, who specifically are we showing up for? Because we're not going to be ubiquitous. We're not going to be Richard Branson. We're not going to be a household name. But it's important for us to decide who do we want to occupy the mind of, and how do we want to shape how they think and feel about us.
Yeah, and I think is it a Jeff Bezos quote where it's your brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room?
Yeah.
And that notion, and I think that's just such a strong takeaway right off the bat for anyone to realize is whether you've intended it or not, whether you are taking actions to control it or not, you have a personal brand. Unless you are literally anonymous in how you run your business. And of course, as membership owners, that isn't possible. You have a personal brand. It's just whether you're in control of it and whether it's actually the brand that you want it to be.
I think that if you have any kind of social media presence, you have a personal brand to an extent. And I think that's true of any local business owner. You have a personal brand, a leisure brand, whatever you want to call it. But a lot of people will allow them to develop by chance, by accident. They're quite organic and natural. And that's fine. But you leave how people think and feel about you to chance, which as a business is, to be crude, suboptimal. And there's just so much that we can bring to this that will almost, if you like, create our own weather system around our business, emotionally and psychologically for other people, which if you're in business, you want to control as much as you can.
Yeah, I would say even more so for membership owners because so many people running online memberships, we are building the business. We're monetizing our expertise. And when people join a membership, they are doing so in large part because they've connected and resonated with you, your expertise, and the way that you teach. You can have the foremost expert in something, but actually if they're just dry and boring and they can't communicate and connect, then they're probably not going to draw people into a membership. So having a bit of control and intentionality around how you're showing up for a membership owner, probably more than someone even selling a course or someone selling services, you are making you and the human behind the expertise a part of your product, whether you want to or not. And you're doing that en masse with something like a membership where it is about volume, it is about reaching more people. And so having that control seems more important than ever. I wonder if you see people who perhaps think, okay, I'm going to build a brand around my membership. I'm going to build a brand around the company. And they think I'm, quote unquote, doing branding because I've got my logo sorted out, and here are the 4 values my membership stands for, and we're going to use blue instead of orange. Are people still making that kind of mistake? Do you think people have more of an understanding of the role brand plays, or are they still thinking your brand is your logo?
Well, I think there's a lot to unpack there. The distinction I like to make for people right at the beginning, in order that they can understand where to put their energy, is, if you can imagine, we've got energy that we can put into our brand. And for business owners, energy is either time or money. It will require 10% of the energy to reach people psychologically, or to achieve any kind of awareness, a baseline awareness with a personal brand, as it will a corporate brand. A corporate brand just requires an awful lot more for people to recognize it. So on that basis, from a commercial perspective, for a micro business owner, if you like, or a solopreneur, you can have a corporate brand, but you're going to be pushing it uphill if you want people to know about it. Whereas if we've got John Smith, founder of the corporate brand, you're going to get places much more quickly.
Yeah.
Similarly, from an emotional investment perspective, it's going to take an awful lot more for me to rally behind a logo than it is for me to rally behind a person. The problem I find a lot of people have is fear starts to kick in. Most people have a negativity bias when it comes to themselves. So I think, well, why would people follow me? It might be much more logical for people to follow this structure that I'm building with all its gloss and glamour. When the opposite is actually true. If you appear to bet on yourself, if you appear to be somebody that people would want to follow, if you will project yourself through a positivity lens rather than a negativity lens, you'll find that's the reality for other people. But when you start to have those conversations, all kinds of things come up for people. Fear is a very complex thing. And it's far more prevalent around the whole idea of personal branding and business in general than people really understand.
Yeah, and I think particularly when we're talking about utilizing online channels as well, the way, when you look at the way that, the stereotypical way that influencers show up online, and it's very polished and it's very highlight reel-esque. Yeah. And then you have people who are telling their stories and they're kind of almost weaponizing vulnerability. And, you almost get into that kind of, it's almost a competition to see who has the biggest sob story. And I can see why that would put people off, and maybe even either amplify that fear or just add another element. So you're already kind of a little imposter syndrome-y. But also on the other side, it's like, okay, well, if I can get over that fear, even if I can get over that, how do I get my personality across? That's not this overly polished influencer type. Like, I still remember seeing this thing. It's like, okay, if I want to be visible online, does this mean I've got to start dancing on TikTok? Like, how do you actually... even setting aside imposter syndrome, how do you make sure that actually it is an authentic presence that's been built, and that it doesn't kind of get washed out amidst all this other over the top, overly filtered, overly polished content that we see out there on social media and the like?
Well, if you take things like, we take for a business owner or a membership owner, you can do TikTok dances.
Yeah.
You can wallow in...
Although, Bob, you don't want to see that. No.
or you can wallow in the negativity lens with complete raw authenticity. And you are essentially amplifying different aspects of yourself. But what you'll typically find is you're amplifying the line of least resistance for you. What you'll typically find is when we start to look at what is it appropriate for me to speak about, we're really starting to lean into this cliche of thought leadership, which I like people to really think about for a moment. What is thought leadership? It's not writing a great blog post. It's leading with your thinking. It's you actually think and that you share that. That's all thought leadership is. And that requires good questions. So I like to sit back and think, well, what's a really good question? And let's play with that. Now, I know you said let's not focus on imposter syndrome. But when we start thinking in those terms, that's when imposter syndrome will start to come in. And what people will normally find is if they sit back and think, well, what does trigger imposter syndrome? That's probably the direction you should be going. Reframing imposter syndrome not as an alarm, but as a beacon, because it's only going to be triggered by the things that are genuinely thought leadership. Now, the negative reactions are the things people worry about the most. So who am I to be talking about this? What are my friends going to think? All of these things. And this really troubled me for years until I understood something outrageously simple. It doesn't matter who you are and what you say. Around a third of people will reject it. They will not like it. They will react negatively to it. A third of people will be completely ambivalent. They will just ignore you. 1/3 of people will love it very actively. And most people spend most of their time worrying about the 2/3 of people who were never for them. They were just tolerating you. But 1/3 of people, they are your people. And if you can filter out the 2/3 and focus on the 1/3, something awesome happens. You start to cut through. And it doesn't matter if you do TikTok dances or you create genuinely useful content. You can start to play the numbers now. And those numbers get really exciting. And for a business owner to be able to create content that genuinely reflects who you are, what you believe in, your own vibe. I'm nobody's idea of an influencer. This is audio, but I'm a bald 50-something with bad teeth and an emerging belly. I think I do quite well in a crowd. But for me, this was really crippling online for years until I understood that if I can just relax into easy self-expression, the people who actually like me for me will start to find me. And this has been life-changing and business-changing. Understanding that it doesn't matter who you are. Just show up, your people will find you. Something awesome happens. That if you're not pretending to be somebody else, the people who find you actually like you. And when they get on a call with you, they're genuinely excited that they're getting to speak with you. When they become clients, they're awesome clients because they're not coming expecting something else.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to kind of look at it and say, well, you know, with the rise of AI, then showing that human side and actually letting your personality out is now important, or now more important than it was. But I think this, for me anyway, has been prevalent for as long as there's been platforms for online visibility.
Yeah.
Because, you know, yes, 10 years ago, maybe we didn't have AI and chatbots where we're kind of like, okay, well, how do we show that we're human? But we absolutely had other people who were putting out content or showing up and being visible in ways that perhaps me looking at it, I was saying, well, I can't show up like that. I can't speak the way they do.
Yeah.
I've got a funny English accent, and most of my audience are in America. They're going to resonate with that person more. This person has invested more in production value. I haven't got the money for that yet. This person sounds so confident. They're so strongly opinionated. Oh, am I known enough to have that kind of opinion? So we've always had things that I think have stifled the the full expression of the human side.
Yeah.
And overcoming those has always presented, I think, a big opportunity, in the same way that now there's this big thing of, all these experts are predicting 2026 is going to be the year that the thing that gives you the advantage is being able to say how human you are. This is made by a human. But I think that's always been an advantage. Showing the actual human side is just, we were going up against people who were acting like robots. Now we're going up against robots who are trying to act like people. And so it's still, the fundamentals are still there, right?
Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, I think if I were looking at, if I were running a social media platform right now, I would be thinking, maybe I'll back up. So 2 things happened to me last year. Number one, I found myself watching a TikTok video, as I want to do for distraction and diversion. And I was about 2 minutes into this video before I realized it was AI.
Mm.
And that triggered some feelings in me. And they were not good ones. I felt cheated. Do your customers want to feel cheated? Probably not. Now, I'm sitting here thinking, if I were a social media platform, I want to keep people on the platform. I don't want unhappy users. So I'm going to have to do one of 2 things. I'm going to have to make sure these people know that this content is synthetic. It's not real. But I also know people don't want it. So I'm probably going to start filtering it out and removing it from the platform. So I think AI from a content marketing perspective, in terms of faceless content, I'm making bunny ears for anybody that's not, nobody can see this. It's just audio, inverted commas, quotation marks, bunny ears, whatever. I don't think pure AI content has much of a future.
And I feel we're already starting to see a pushback on that by the platforms, and definitely by audiences.
Yeah. I've forgotten where I was going to go with this, but the other thing I wanted to say is I look at AI as an amplifier. So if you are a horrendous bro marketer that's just trying to trick people, it will make that easier.
Yeah.
If you take somebody like me, I'm a terrible monologuer, despite what it might appear on this podcast. If I just want to hit record and start talking, I can't do it. But now I can walk around the park, rambling into my phone, and then I can come back, I can upload that audio track, I can process it through AI using a prompt that knows exactly how to create an outstanding solo podcast script. From my ramblings, it'll structure that into something that I can read as a script, and it will sound wonderful. For me, that's a great use of AI, because it's just me, but properly structured through a filter in order that I have a new interface, so I can be more meaningful, more logical, and more well-structured.
Yeah.
That's something that would have taken me hours previously, and I wouldn't have done it.
And that, for anyone who's kind of part of what's holding them back from being more intentional about showing up and sharing their expertise in that perspective, if part of that lack of confidence is feeling like you can't organize your thoughts, or feeling like you can't convey the knowledge that you absolutely have, the substance, then yeah, that can be a breakthrough.
It is. It absolutely is. AI for me has been a breakthrough. People probably wouldn't be able to see the AI that's used in my business or in my content marketing, but it's absolutely there. AI is a thinking partner. AI helps me draft almost every social media post. But it's not, I'm not asking AI, what should I post today? I'm usually dictating 200 or 300 words to AI.
Yeah.
And then it's drafting a post for me. And then I'm going in and I'm giving it the pop and the sparkle. But I couldn't be as prolific as I am these days without it.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely my ideas, and it gives me the confidence to know that the finished product is going to be consistently great.
Yeah. And so I think anything that can help you kind of get past that resistance, or kind of strike out some of those reasons not to start more deliberately showing up, or more authentically showing up as part of personal brand building efforts, I think is definitely a positive. But let's say someone hasn't ever really put any thought into their personal brand. You know, they've got one, as we've established, but it's not necessarily one they've designed. It's not necessarily one they've controlled. and it's kind of happened just by accident. What are some of the first steps or the key steps that someone can take if they want to grab that narrative, grab that brand, and start giving it some direction and purpose?
I think number one, who is it for? And this has got potential to get a little bit complicated, but one of the things I find a lot of people do is they create a personal brand that's designed for somebody that's a lot like them. A lot of people will tell you you should, as an expert business, position your business for somebody that's a bit like you or perhaps a step behind. And I think that's terrible advice. I like to think of my dream client and who do they need to believe me to be in order for them to say yes to the transformation that I want to support. So the first question I always ask a potential client is, just imagine there's a version of you in a parallel universe. They're doing exactly what you would love to do. They're living your life. They're working with the kind of clients that you just begin to imagine you might be able to work with. How does that person move through the world? Who are they? And start to communicate from that person's perspective. And what you find is gradually you migrate to becoming that person fairly easily. Personal brand is not just about what you transmit. It's also about your identity. And over time, that identity is going to shift, and you want to do that quite intentionally. So who is it for? And reach high. The next thing I encourage people to think about is look at your last 30 social media posts. If you have, you'll probably find there's a line of least resistance. You typically post about the same set of things. And if you imagine that your social media feed was an impressionist painting, it's just a bunch of splodges. When you step back, those splodges tell a story. They allow me to fill the gaps with my imagination. So look at the categories of content that you're creating and be a bit more intentional in order that your scaffold is providing a little bit more three-dimensionality. So are you posting about what you do for fun from time to time? Are you perhaps opening an intentional window into your family? Not everything, but enough. Are you moving into thought leadership? So a broader palette, I would say, so that people can feel like they know more of you. Celebrities sometimes do this really well. They're quite intentional about giving enough raw material for me to feel the relationship is real. The next thing is to think about your content marketing not as individual posts, but those posts creating a tapestry over time. And it's the tapestry that tells the story. Those are a few key moves. I think the final one, is thinking about the signals that you're sending. Are you sending signals of authority, confidence, activity, or are you sending signals of insecurity and ambiguity? So you need to be really specific about who you are and what you do, that you do it, that other people trust you. Because if you're not sending those signals, they're not going to be received. An important thing for people to realize is that silence is a vacuum. And in that silence, people will fill it with their own assumptions.
Yeah.
You need to be very intentional about the signals that you send in order that you don't create a vacuum, that you are crafting how other people see you. The final thing I will say is, if for the average business owner, and I think this is equally true to an extent of memberships, 70% of opportunity is going to come from people who are already in your audience. And for the majority of our audience or our network, we're locked away in long-term memory. And we don't want to be in long-term memory. We want to be in short-term memory. So if we think about our social media feeds on any platform, and even if it's email, think about it like it's just a busy road. People are driving down this busy road every day, and the road's lined with people on the pavements, walking up and down. That's how we approach social media. But if there's somebody standing by the side of the road that you vaguely know, and they're looking towards you and they're maybe waving, the subconscious is going to filter them right into your focus. And from a content marketing perspective, this is a call to use your face. Doesn't matter how much you dislike your own face. It's a powerful tool. Use it.
Yeah.
Your face does something neurologically that's quite unique. Specific neurons light up when we use our face on social media. And the more frequently you do it, the more that neural pathway cements itself, the more persistent we are in short-term memory. So when somebody's saying, oh, you know what, I was thinking about learning to play the guitar, you need to speak to my friend Jimmy. He's got a membership, even if he's never met you.
Yeah.
His experience, because frequently there's been an experience there, is that there's instant recall. I know this person because they always smile in a picture. They consistently talk about these things. Therefore, you need to speak to Jimmy. So that when somebody says, I'm thirsty, the first thing you do if you've got some Coke in the cupboard is, would you like a Coke? Coca-Cola uses repetition and emotion very powerfully. It doesn't make sense for them to be using a face anymore. But that, because they've got the money to put into it, they've achieved similar things. But you really don't want to be in long-term memory. You want to be in short-term memory. And the face is the number one tool that you have to bring to bear on this.
So it's showing your face and doing so consistently. So it's not kind of a rare thing that you actually show up in person. Like, yeah.
And I think a really useful exercise is to try and think of some creative ways that you can do this, because, well, I would invite anybody listening, go and have a look at my LinkedIn feed. See, I work quite hard at this, not because I like my face, but because I know it works.
Yeah.
And I've got quite a few different ways that I'll feed my face into things. It sounds so narcissistic.
So we've got to feed your face into everything. No, I love that. And you mentioned LinkedIn there, and we talked about, doing content marketing and all of that. From a practical standpoint, when it comes to platforms, you do seem to get contrasting advice from different corners of the online space between you should try to have a presence everywhere versus just going deep into one platform. What have you found works best? Is it something where you need to strike a balance? Is it very much dependent on you? What would you recommend to someone who, again, is perhaps just starting to be intentional about this, about where they should focus their effort?
There's a few answers to the question. The first one is, what gives you energy? And what resources do you have available? So if you have a media team, I would be encouraging that media team to optimize for as many platforms as they reasonably can. And there are lots of tools and tactics that you can apply to that. If it's just you, personally, I would look at the platform that I feel most aligned with, most comfortable, and that has already demonstrated some embers of success. For me, I really focus almost exclusively on LinkedIn these days because I don't have a lot of time. I haven't had huge success as a TikTok dancer. I'm not actually very good with short form video because I'm not TikTok material. I'm a slow burn, lo-fi person. And I think that probably works better on LinkedIn or on Instagram, which would be my secondary. But at the end of the day, I look at every social media platform as an analog to a theater. they're just people at the end of the day. People are people. A relationship is a relationship. So what mode are people in on the platform that I'm on? So if you're on TikTok, most people are on TikTok to be diverted, to be distracted. So if you're teaching something that's a diversion or a distraction, maybe those are the platforms that make sense. If you're business to business, or if you're dealing with professionals and you want people to be thinking about you when they're thinking about those things, maybe a LinkedIn makes more sense. It comes down to conversion rates. How likely are people to convert?
Yeah.
So it's not a simple answer to a simple question. I do have one important answer to this question, though.
Go for it.
Which is, I like to look at content marketing in general like an investment portfolio. We've got short-term investments. You pay your money today, you get your result today. You pay your energy today, you get your result today. And here I'm looking at ads. But my one rule with ads is you can't multiply by 0. So unless you've got something that's already converting, don't go there. Then we've got medium-term investments. And here we're talking about all the social medias. You put your effort in today, one of two things are going to happen. You'll get lucky, or over time, it will begin to work. And it doesn't matter what platform it is. Then the third category is the genuine long-term investment that pays compound interest over time. Here we're talking podcast, blog, and YouTube. Because I can publish nothing for the next 6 months, and 1,000 people a week will still find me for the first time because of those things. So for me, that's an important distinction, that here we're building a genuine asset and not simply going to the casino, which is how I approach social media. If we then come back to social media with one of these long-term investments, we're playing a different game because we're repurposing that content, not simply fighting to stay on the hamster wheel.
Yeah. So would you, is your approach with clients, with yourself, are we starting with that longer term investment? You know, if someone is just getting started, we start with that long term, and that then makes the medium term investment and showing up on social a little easier, I suppose, to streamline the messaging as well, because, you know, you can distill long form better into short form. Now I suppose you can try and blow up short form into something more. So are we starting with that deeper stuff and kind of almost working backwards?
I think my focus with clients is helping them to build, market, and monetize the personal brand. And with the podcast, we're able to do several things. It's a relationship engine for me, first and foremost. What people listen to is the byproduct, but the relationships that you build through the podcast can become extremely significant for the business. And a lot of my clients, they need that relationship engine as a priority. And so it is a great first place to go. Similarly, perceived status and authority are significant factors when it comes to personal branding. I can say I'm fabulous, but when Mike Morrison says I'm fabulous, that's much more valuable to me.
Absolutely. And you are fabulous as well, Bob. So
I am fabulous, but so are you. But when you've got other people that people already look at as significant, advocating for you, we're judged by the company we keep. And a podcast is a vehicle for being seen to hang out with fancy people. And I remember when I had Pat Flynn on my podcast the first time, it's like this seismic wave went out through my network, and it came back. People saw me differently. And that's really important when it comes to building your personal brand, because if people will believe in you more readily, then they'll buy from you more readily.
Yeah.
Obviously, the prerequisite is you have a great product.
And of course, a great personal brand doesn't paper over the cracks of a terrible product. Like, no, it's all symbiotic.
But for me, the podcast is the most highly leveraged activity, which is why I'll often go there first. It will allow you to get into people for sales conversations you could never speak to normally. There's authority by association. There's been seen as a genuine industry expert because you have a platform. Plus, you can then repurpose that into YouTube and crack that nut too. And then you have a podcast, which has its own value, which you can then repurpose to social media. So it really, as a long-term investment, it just ticks so many boxes.
I think it helps you get better at sharpening your point and exploring your own perspective. I think you're more inclined if you're just sitting with a microphone and you don't have an audience. You know, obviously your podcast's not going to be at the stage where they're doing arena tours like a lot of big podcasts seem to be now. You don't have an audience, and so you're not being looked upon. And in doing that, you kind of get to practice forming opinions, practice distilling information in a way that doesn't take 2 hours to explain a basic concept. And that's just going to have a knock-on effect to how you're able to then show up in person on social media, where perhaps it might be a little more daunting, the idea of trying to get a point across and do some thought leadership content in a 60-second Instagram story or something like that. No, I'm a huge fan of podcasting, and we've talked about this several times. I think it's a perfect sweet spot between barrier to entry, because you're not having to buy all sorts of camera equipment and make sure that, you know, your clothes are perfect and the makeup's on right and the beard's trimmed. Like, it can just be you, a microphone, and what you've got to say. And I think that's one of the rawest ways in which you can actually put yourself out there.
I think two things. Number one, if anybody's listening to this and we say podcast and you immediately start thinking about video cameras and studios, stop. The majority of people who experience podcasts these days, that's what they think, because they're not audio listeners. They don't listen to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. They experience podcasts because it popped up on a TikTok or a YouTube video. That's not what we're talking about here. A podcast is inherently a ludicrously simple thing. There's another aspect to what you described a moment ago, which is, so I remember I used to be really insecure about personal branding and having any kind of visible self-advocacy for me as an expert, because I just didn't believe it. And I think that's most people's default setting is imposter syndrome of one kind or another. And I remember having a beer with Ian Anderson Gray, who I'm quite sure has been on your podcast. And he said one thing he did was he kept a journal of the nice things people said about him, which sounds very narcissistic. But what it does is it offers an alternative to this negativity lens that we always look at ourselves through. We now have a positivity lens. And my goodness, I was filtering a lot out. And one of the things with podcast guests is when they're repeatedly feeding back to you, you're really good at this. You really know what you're talking about. Wow, you should come on my podcast. It drives an identity change, which you can't underestimate the impact of. A podcast is not just about what you put out. It's also about what happens on the inside. And I keep coming back to this. A personal brand is not just about what you transmit. It's also about what you grow on the inside. And I remember one of my podcast guests, for me, this is a big moment. A lady pitched to come on my podcast, and she made soap at home. And how many times have you heard about somebody making soap at home? This person had turned it into a $2.5 million business at that point.
Wow.
This is like 3 years ago. And she'd done it in probably about 2 years.
Wow.
And I thought, I want to know what happened here. Well, how did she turn this into that? And then I asked her on the podcast, what do you think was different about how you approached it? And her answer was, your business will only grow when you grow. There's a direct correlation here. And I'm something like 300 podcast episodes in now. And one thing I've discovered is universal. The most successful people that I've spoken to will acknowledge that they are internally completely different people to who they were when they started that business. And if they parachuted the person that they were into the business that they now had, it would be destroyed within a few weeks.
Yeah.
And we need to understand and honor and permit that growth. And for me, that's really important.
And it comes from pushing yourself a little, just a little more, making yourself show up. And yeah, having the right kind of filters. I think that was a really important thing that you'd said about recognizing that you are not meant to be for everyone. Yeah. You wouldn't want to be for everyone. And if you focus more on the people you are for, and the people who will love your perspective and want to hear your perspective, and accept that you could play it safe, but then you'd be alienating the other side of that spectrum. And so you can't be for everyone, so just be for yourself and be for your people. So I want to kind of finish with a real practical thing. So let's, again, just sort of say someone's had no intentionality, or maybe someone's just starting out and they want to really get a good foothold on their personal brand. What are some first steps they can take this week? So just over the next week, whether it's changing what they're doing, whether it's getting their ducks in a row and just getting smarter about this, or whether it's getting started for the first time, what would you say are some of the things, the practical steps someone could take over this next 7 days to course correct or just get off on the right track?
So most people I meet are really anxious about personal visibility. They, like me at the beginning, were crippled by the idea of publishing a selfie. And I used to work in search and rescue. And I remember sitting at a table with a bunch of business owners, telling them what I wanted to accomplish. But in order to do that, I was going to need to be really visible, and I was finding that tough. And I had a punch myself in the face moment, because I was quite happy jumping out of a helicopter into the sea, but I couldn't post a selfie.
Wow.
I thought, how do we train people to do really scary things? And it's really simple. It's a process of gradual desensitization over time. So if you're listening thinking, I could never post a video, or I could never post a selfie, just do this. Every day, take a selfie. Don't do anything with it. Just take a selfie. And over time, you'll find you start to feel differently. Similarly, if you're not feeling creative, if you don't know what to say, then an idea, there's a book called Choose Yourself, written by James Altucher. And in this, he has a really simple method of training idea generation, where he says, every day, just write down 10 ideas. And it could be, for example, 10 ideas for places I could leave my pen where I know I'll always find it. Or 10 ideas for things I could have in a sandwich that I will never eat. And the goal is to write them down and then just throw them out. These are not ideas that we want to take action on. And very quickly, you'll find that you start triggering ideas for the things that you actually need. Somebody I heard recently on a podcast said, ideas are like fish. They swim off down the river. You have to catch them or they're gone. So whenever I have an idea for a piece of social media content, it goes in this book immediately, one line, and then I can forget about it.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the week, I've got 30 ideas for things to talk about. So write it down immediately. Have you ever kept a dream journal?
Not a dream journal, because I dream about theme parks, like repeatedly. I don't need a journal. I can tell you what my dreams were about. Theme parks.
So I've done it a couple of times, and something really weird happens. The average person will remember a dream in the morning, maybe. If you start writing down what they were, even if it's just one dream, I think it was something about a fish. Tomorrow, you're going to remember a bit more. And if you do this for up to a week, at the end of that week, you're going to be overwhelmed with the amount of stuff that happened during the week, during the night. It's spectacular and it's infallible. And it's really just a process of signaling to the subconscious, what do you need to know? And it will give you what you need to know very, very quickly. And that's why writing stuff down matters. What I would also say from a personal brand perspective is think about your ideal client and then think about who do they need to believe you to be in order to be really excited. And then create a character based on yourself that supports that. One of the problems I think everybody has is they think I need to be authentic. And this is terrible. I remember watching an advert for toothpaste. I watched an Amazon Prime movie and it started showing ads, and I hadn't seen ads for a long time. And this toothpaste ad wheeled out a 20-something in a lab coat and amazing hair and teeth, and I was supposed to believe she was a dentist. If it's all right for them to take a few creative liberties, it's all right for you and I, but do it with integrity. Give yourself permission to play a role with enthusiasm and enjoy it. Don't feel like you always have to show up as you, because that's probably going to be unproductive.
I mean, there's a great book from Todd Herman called The Alter Ego Effect, which is, it's choose the parts of yourself and the things that, are with integrity still you, but that you can amplify, or that you can not fake it till you make it, but you can push yourself to in order to be who you need to be for the circumstance. Whether it's, it's people put on a telephone voice, like I have a radio voice, I have a podcast voice. Everybody does this every day. And so, getting clarity on that, you can absolutely see, particularly if someone's a little bit wary about putting themselves forward online.
The Alter Ego Effect was huge for me. That book is largely the reason I have any confidence online whatsoever these days. Just understand that imposter syndrome is not intended to be an alarm for people like you and I. It's intended to be a beacon, and that on the other side of that door is what other people don't have. Everything worth having is on the other side of imposter syndrome.
No, I think that's a good place to end it. And I do think, the points about essentially training yourself and normalizing the things that you will need to be able to do. Generate ideas, feel comfortable seeing your own face. I love those tips. And for someone just getting started, they might be kind of thinking, okay, well, I just need to know, like, what should the post format for LinkedIn be? But none of that is going to be useful unless you figure out who you're showing up for and you find a place of comfort in the fundamentals of what showing up for them actually means and looks like. I love that. So, Bob, I could keep you here talking about, well, pretty much anything, but especially talking about the world of online business and branding and how we show up online all day. But you've already given us so much good insight and direction and advice. But if someone does want more from you on how to map out their personal brand, where can they find you? So
I can be found on, contradicting myself, pretty much every social media platform at Bob Gentle. LinkedIn is my favorite. I will welcome you most on LinkedIn. I have a podcast. Just search Building Your Leader Brand or Bob Gentle. And if people are interested in building, marketing, and monetizing their personal brand, they can download the Personal Brand Business Roadmap 100% free from my website at amplifyme.agency.
Love that. And of course, we'll get all those links in the show notes. Bob, thank you so much for coming on the show. I think anyone who's been hesitating about being more intentional with their personal brand now has that gentle kick up the butt to actually do that, and some guidance on how to bust through that imposter syndrome, but also just to crystallize and be more intentional about building a brand that can take their business forward. So I so appreciate you coming on the show. You have been fabulous. Just to throw that in there as well for the file of nice things people have said about you.
Well, thank you very much. And I have one last thing, which I think for your audience is particularly important. A lot of the things we've been describing are strange behavior. They're extreme behavior. And they will always feel weird unless you're around other people who are doing the same thing. And I think this is why your community is so important, that you will always feel weird trying to build your personal brand unless you're around other people who are doing it too.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I think so much of that is that normalization and the desensitization that we talk about. And yeah, I think, this could be a whole other rabbit hole to go down in terms of my own journey and being in rooms and being in entrepreneurial circles where standing out in that way was actually discouraged. So yes, the room that you're in makes such a difference in so many ways, and this is absolutely one of them.
Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show, Bob. And I absolutely encourage anyone listening to check out the fantastic work Bob's doing, and to check out the podcast and all the great stuff and insight that Bob shares. Bob, thanks again for coming on the Membership Geeks podcast.
Thank you.
All right, big thanks once again to Bob Gentle for joining me on the Membership Geeks podcast. Honestly, I think this is one of those topics where most membership owners understand and they know how important personal branding is, but they underestimate just how much of an impact it can have on what they're building with their membership business. Not just on the growth of the business, but on their own confidence, on their own ability to develop clarity around their message, to hone their teaching, to better position themselves in the market, and to open up opportunities that you simply cannot get by hiding away or putting everything behind a logo or a broader corporate brand. Because once you put that personal brand front and center, and once you allow people to hear your voice, to get your ideas, to see your perspective, this is where things change. And hopefully today's episode has given you a more grounded, more human way of thinking about personal branding. It's not just about getting content out there. It's not just about having flashy selfies to put on social media. It's much deeper than that, and it's something that you have to intentionally work to build. If you want to know how to do that and you want to check out more of what Bob's doing, he's over at amplifyme.agency. And if you look for the Building Your Leader Brand podcast on all your podcast channels, it's well worth subscribing to as well. Also, be sure to check out his personal brand business roadmap. It's a fantastic guide that walks you through building a personal brand in a way that's sustainable and will actually support your growth. All right, that is it from me for today. Thanks ever so much for joining me for today's show. Thanks again to Bob, and I'll see you next time for the next episode of the Membership Geeks podcast. Bye for now. If you enjoyed this week's episode of the Membership Geeks podcast, we invite you to check out membershipacademy.com. Membership Academy is the original membership about memberships, and it's the essential resource for anyone at any stage of starting, growing, and running a successful online membership business. Whether you're still trying to figure out what your idea is going to be and you need some help making it a reality, or whether your website is already up and running and you're looking for ways to grow and attract new members, then Membership Academy can help you to get to the next level. Not only do you get access to our step-by-step membership roadmap, our extensive training library, and exclusive member-only discount and tools, you'll also become part of our supportive, active community of membership owners that will help you along the way in your journey with feedback, encouragement, and advice. All of this and more make Membership Academy the #1 place to be for anyone looking to start, manage, and grow a successful membership business. Check it out and join the community at membershipacademy.com.